Hello, today we're going to talk a little bit about Aristotle's 6 elements of drama. Aristotle was a Greek philosopher who lived, actually when he wrote the Poetics it was about 335 BCE. And Aristotle was an empiricist. In other words, he looked at things and he kind of considered how they were put together, what made them up. And very different from the Greek philosopher Plato, who was sort of metaphysical. Plato was interested in the spirit and in ideal worlds, but Aristotle was very down to earth. And he had his hands into a lot of different areas of knowledge. But what concerns us here is what he said about tragedy in something called the Poetics. And basically he sort of looked into the area of science and said there are 6 elements. Now in science we know an element is something that can't be broken down. It's something smaller. And it also is something that when you combine them they create more complex compounds. And it was very similar analogy that Aristotle used for tragedy. So what he said was that drama is composed of 6 elements. And these elements are in a hierarchy. In other words, he placed plot at the top, then character, then thought, then diction, then music, and then spectacle. So he's basically saying that the character is more important than spectacle. Now what I'm going to do when I explain this to you, I'm going to use a lot of references from movies, because basically the structure of this is the same whether you're talking about plays or movies. Later on in the semester we will talk exclusively about plays, but I think you might have a better chance of understanding this if I refer to movies. So if you haven't seen some of these movies, better go see them, get the Netflix card out and see what happens. Alright, well, on the lowest level, says Aristotle, is spectacle. And he says that spectacle is all that is seen. So when we go to see a play, we look on the stage and we see lights and we see sets and costumes. We also see movement. And that means that dance is spectacle, is considered spectacle. Now when we go to the movies and watch a film, there's another aspect of movement, and that is basically camera movement. So the camera can move around, and today we can do marvelous things with digital cameras that are sort of inside this environment, and we can swoop and dive and move all over the place. So we'll get back to spectacle in the next lecture when we talk about how it's actually applied to film, okay, and plays. So the next thing was music, and Aristotle says that music is all that you hear. Well, that of course means music if they are having music, but it also means sound effects, and it also means something else. If you listen to someone's voice, you notice that they have musical qualities in their voice. So they have pitch and tone and timbre, and you could probably recognize your best friend's voice if they called you up and spoke in a foreign language or even in gibberish. And the reason is that you're responding to the musical qualities and tone of their voice. So actors have this. And some actors have a particular tone that sort of gets a response from us. So if you think of Jack Nicholson's voice, for example, you might think of a sarcastic sort of snide, snarling tone that comes to mind. So basically that is music. The other aspect above music then is something called diction. And diction doesn't really mean pronouncing words clearly like you might think it might mean in a speech class. It means the vocabulary that the characters have, the words that they choose. So this can mean a lot of different things. So basically we have the vocabulary, we have slang, we have maybe some type of an accent, any kind of ethnicity that is being drawn out in the language. There's a lot of other things that language can do though. So let's say that you go to a gangster film and your date is a little upset that they're using 4-letter words. Well, you might explain to them the concept of diction, and for some reason today we've come to accept the fact that gangsters swear. in the old movies, for example, like in the 30s, they couldn't swear because there was codes in place that prevented that. But basically, what did they talk like? Well, you know, Edward G. Robinson and James Cagney used things like, "You dirty rat, I'm going to rub you out." Kind of funny today, and we think of a film like Johnny Dangerously, starring Michael Keaton. But back then, audiences really didn't think that was like funny. They thought, wow, we're getting a backstage pass into the slang, into the argot of gangsters. So language is used to express character, and that's one of its aspects when you talk about a gangster movie and how they speak in there. I'll return to my discussion of diction in the next mini lecture, and we'll get into it a little more. So after diction, there is thought, and thought is the idea, the message, comes from the Greek dianoia, and basically it's the theme if you study an English class, you take an English literature class, and so it's the message, and messages do not have to be complicated. They can be very simple. Life is fun, life is happy. They can be dark and depressing. Evil always wins. Don't trust anybody. Those types of things. So you usually should be able to figure out what that theme is after you've seen the movie. If you're really confused, then somebody didn't put it together right. Okay. Next we have character. Well, obviously, character are the people in the play, the human beings about which the story revolves about. But actually, it's a little more than that if you think about it. It's the moral stances. It's their belief in right and wrong of the people in the play that make the story work. Okay, so if a villain believes that he's entitled to take over the world's gold supply, that's his belief system. And of course, that's going to put him on a course of action that perhaps will conflict with the hero's. So maybe the hero believes that his mission in life is to protect the world's gold supply, another moral value. So they're going to have a conflict, and you can find this construction in every piece of Western literature almost ever written. So we have to remember that it's about what the characters' beliefs are, not just them being physical presences in the play or the film. And then finally we have plot. And we're going to simplify it a little bit here, and for our purposes we're going to say that it's the series of events as planned by the author, the way the thing is put together. And each of those events will make another event happen, and finally we will push towards the end of this play or film and have a climax. And that will resolve, in most cases, the conflicts and the actions. So next time we meet, we are going to explore each of these areas in a little more detail and show how they might be used in specific films. So until next time, have a good week, and we'll see you then.